to continue, Debbie dropped down to 80 pounds and she eventually passed away. Donald, her ex-husband, showed up there and I could see the guilt in his face. He shortly committed suicide. He blew his head off in the backyard of his house. Shortly after her death, he was dying from hepatitis himself. I am glad that she found Gordon and he took good care of her before she died, and I know that that's why she had a hard time leaving this world, because she finally had someone who wouldn't beat her and mistreat her. And then she had her grandchildren and her 3 beautiful children. The women in my family were very loyal and faithful to their men and constantly forgave them. And I really feel sorry for myself and my cousins, and that we went through seeing that. I sympathize and empathize with all those who suffer from domestic violence, the losses that it caused, and the brokenness, the brokenheartedness. I loved my aunts and my grandmas like second mothers. They were, and my cousins were like sisters and brothers to me. There was a time when we were very close before we lived in other states like we do now, and before Cindy had taken custody of my brother. And this happened when I was in my early 20s, after an event where my mother had lost my brother and I had lost my son. My brother had been sexually abused in the foster home, and he acted that out and abused my child, and it caused DCFS to be involved. And long story short, my Aunt Cindy talked my mother into letting her take Kevin, my brother, and then my grandmother took my son Adrian temporarily. Well, it was a big scheme to get a hold of my brother and his money, is what it turned out to be. So it caused a lot of separation in the family and fighting in the family. But nonetheless, I do love my family, and I pray for them, and I pray for restoration and healing. I haven't been apologized to by my Aunt Cindy for what she did, and I did hear that she got into some kind of trouble for embezzling my brother's money, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I do believe that we do reap what we sow, and that every dog has its day. And my prayer is that if she is in some kind of trouble, that she repents and she makes things right with those who she's wronged, including me, because when my mother passed away, she wouldn't even let my brother come to his funeral. She wouldn't help pay for my mother's funeral. My mother had to sit on ice for 6 days. And my brother is a multi-millionaire. He inherited a lot of money through the hospital and doctors that my mother sued when he got spinal meningitis. And long story short, there was plenty of financial help that could have been given to me and my mom through my brother's estate that wasn't given because of greed, selfishness, fear that they would lose my brother, who is their bread ticket to me or my mom. So I do believe that proper justice will happen one day about the whole situation. And my strengths and weaknesses come from my experiences. So that's why I'm pouring out my heart and soul to speak the truth to people, to save people's souls. I do know that the Most High, the highest of the high, our true source and good creator, is merciful, and his love never ends, and he does everything he can to save us. And I know that there was constant instability in my life. I had to move every 6 months to a year. My parents were always fighting, tearing up furniture, tearing up our apartment. like with my poor Aunt Debbie, I seen her worked in factories and as a waitress and as a bartender. And Donnie had took her children when they broke up. He set her up, said he'd get her arrested for drugs. And yeah, she was being neglectful for a while there. I remember spending a few nights with her after I had visited from Florida, and my cousins were being seriously neglected. She was nowhere near as clean as she used to be, and she was going downhill, and she was sleeping with different men every night and doing drugs, and her kids were being neglected. And I asked my grandma and my aunt to take them and help them because I had to go back to Florida. You know, my cousins Sherry, Danielle, and Felicia, Cindy's daughters, I'd hang out with them when I was growing up if we lived by them. And I'd hang out with Selena, Jasmine, and Adam if they were living by us like they did when we were living in the suburbs. And I'd always end up getting awoke to fights. And one night when I had spent the night with Deb and Ferg, I woke up with an orgy going on, and my uncle tried to do something to me. I remember him having devil masks on the wall and saying that he was a vampire. I can remember my uncle being perverted with me and trying to seduce me when I was a little girl. Always saying things about my bubble butt or my boobs developing, as well as my father. There was a lot of inappropriate behavior, tickling, and I was sexually abused as a child by several uncles and by my uncle's brothers. And Deb had developed a very serious coke addict, and that's a habit, and that's what killed her. And I was 18 that time I came to visit her, and that was when she lost her children. I remember asking her to clean up her act so she wouldn't lose her children, and she was just in denial. She was so hooked on drugs. I loved my Aunt Deb, though. She really lit up the room. She was a good, sweethearted woman. Her husband, Donald, was a handsome man, and it's sad that they did not just love each other and treat each other right, that there was infidelity in their relationship and they would beat each other. The drugs and the alcohol helped destroy their relationship and their marriage and their home and their children. And the same happened with my parents. That's what ruined their marriage. The drugs, the alcohol, my father beating my mother, cheating on my mother. Sometimes the men in their lives and in my life could literally be snakes in the grass. It's sad, but my dear cousin Selena, her son committed suicide when he was like 20 years old, and this happened shortly after my son Zachary got killed. He had went camping with some kids. This was when I was locked up, and he climbed a TV antenna and fell from over 100 feet, and supposedly was lifted up in a plane and died up in the airlift. Well, I think it was about a month later, her son hung himself, and he was saying that he didn't want to be evil like his father and his grandfather. Zachary passed away August 6, 2011, and Selena's son, Louis, I believe was his name, passed away in September of 2011. I had 6 children, and my children have been through a lot because of the poor choices that I made also. The death of a child, the death of my son, has devastated me and crushed me and caused me a lot of pain, because I look back and I think, if I hadn't made the mistakes that I have, would Zachary still be alive? And I feel really heartbroken for my cousin too, because losing a child is one of the most devastating pains. It literally rips your heart out of your chest. My heart goes out to you, cuz, and anyone who has lost a child. It's an unfortunate, overwhelmingly painful thing, and it has caused a lot of pain to my children, because not only did they lose their father when John and I divorced after a 14-year marriage, and he became a full-blown alcoholic and drug addict and has not been there for them emotionally or much physically in life in the last 15 years. But then they lost me when the incident happened with David and I was incarcerated, and they lost me for a sum of about 5 years, and then they lost their brother in that time, in that interim. I know that there's hope in my soul searching, I know so, but the poor choices that all of us make in life end up affecting even the innocent. And for that, I feel so sorrowful toward my children, and my sympathy goes out to their hearts, that they may be repaired, that they may be healed, that they may be restored, as well as all my loved ones that have suffered losses. And I want to comfort her and let her know that her son is not in hell. A lot of preachers and teachers will tell you that that is an unpardonable sin that leads to hell, that it's a destruction of the body in the temple. And he was talking about sexual sin, 1 Corinthians 6:19, because why would Samuel, the prophet who had talked to Saul, yes, Saul had fallen away, but he ended up committing suicide when he was in the battle, and he was anointed by the Most High, and I believe he did face death for what he did, but that it did not send him to hell. And I don't believe that Shamson is really say it, went to hell when he tore down the temples and committed suicide and took down the whole Roman Empire with him. So I believe it's the circumstances of the person's mind and the condition of their mind and the reason why. I have done a lot of study and research with my 1611 companion Bible that has 198 appendixes. I've done a lot of referencing and cross-referencing with the Strong's Concordance and research in the original Aramaic Hebrew. And I do reference people to listen to, people like Pastor Arnold Murray from Shepherd's Chapel. He teaches a lot of the scriptures in the original Hebrew. Then you have Alan Horvath, who does a lot of good teachings, and he's on YouTube. You have the Aramaic Hebrew translations by Sarah's daughter. There is a lot of other shepherders of the flock who are giving more truth, more profound truth about the word in the original scriptures that have been hidden and not properly revealed and translated to us in the English language and in the translations. The Masoretes added to and took away from the writ. We need to get the original Hebrew language back into our vocabulary as much as possible. There is power in the true names and in the true translations. Let no one pull a wool over your eyes. Just because somebody goes to seminary school or theology school does not mean that they teach the whole truth. My father personally had overdosed on drugs and went down. He ended up in the hospital for 2 months and died. Everything shut down. But a lot of people will consider it a type of suicide, and I don't believe that he went to hell. I believe that the Creator fasted him out, and that was his judgment, and that he was cleansed out before he met our Maker. Suicide is a form of self-murder, but if you study the Old Testament, which I do like how Pastor Arnold Murray explains about murder, that there's the crime of passion murder, there's cold-blooded murder, and he explains that when there's a heated argument between lovers, husband and wife, and something happens from infidelity or whatnot, that's considered a crime of passion. When someone kills themselves because of depression and sadness, or over the loved one, or the death of a relationship, that is considered a passionate crime. When it's cold-blooded is where we've got these rapists and pedophiles and people who do home invasions and kill innocent people. That is cold-blooded murder. I believe that the Most High, the highest of the high, our Creator and Judge, is very compassionate and suffering great love for us, and that He's a fair and just judge, and that He is a man of wrath, but also a man of love and justice. And believe me, I know I've been talking to Him since I was a little girl. I got saved when I was 7 years old. I don't believe He would have restored Samson's strength, who had been, his eyes gouged out and had been used as a slave, and his hair cut off, which is where his strength came from, and let him actually take down those rulers and destroy the Roman Empire, if in fact it wasn't a righteous judgment. And Saul, when he pierced his side to save himself from what the Philistines would do to him, because it was known that they were very cruel in the way that they would kill people, he pierced his side to save himself from any type of torture and torment that they would do to him. So my dear loved ones, if you have lost